for Monday, December 11th. If you could all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could have the clerk call the roll.
Here.
Baldwin.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
Gardner.
Here.
Muncy.
Here.
Stanton.
Here.
White.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. As far as mayor's comments tonight, I just wanted to again thank April Gundy for coming in at the last second to be in charge of our Christmas parade, our holiday parade. I know Bertie Holly also helped with getting in a last minute application. And April had a lot going on that day. She was doing a Christmas pub crawl through town that also, raises money for, the cause that she is in charge of here in town, which is, help me out, Operation Hope for Allegan Youth.
Yes.
Okay. And I went to her place the other day and she had so many toys and so many clothing items. And she's just, honestly, if I had a way to nominate her for Citizen of the Year in our tri-community area, she's done such an amazing job. But I also want to thank DPW and the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department for not only rolling with the punches when we changed the parade route at the last second, just to make it what it always is, and making sure that we had, volunteers and trucks in the places that we needed them to be to make things safe. I appreciate that so much. So it was a wonderful time, and it's just a great time to be in Saugatuck because it is gorgeous right now. So with that, city manager comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Echo your comments. Thank you so much. And then specifically April Gundy, she was awesome. She came in at the last minute and she killed it. She was really, really good communicator and the city really appreciates that. My comments are on page 9. We'll talk about those later on in the staff reports.
Okay. Are there any agenda changes? Any guest speakers for tonight? All right. So this is time for a public comment on agenda items only. Anyone in the audience? Go ahead. Whew, you got here just in time.
So if I'm out of breath, it's only.
And if you could just state your name and where you live.
Hi, I'm Nancy Kimball, 550 Spear Street, live in the city of Saugatuck. And I'm commenting on agenda item 15C. 15 is new business, letter C references the Blue Star Trail. And I just briefly wanted to also acknowledge that I am on the board for the Blue Star Trail, Friends of the Blue Star Trail, and also a member of Saugatuck's PPW committee. So I'm very familiar with this project's long history, and I'm not going to bother to review all that with you tonight. But I wanted to acknowledge the project has finally really gained traction, and we're scheduled for construction in 2025. So on your agenda is the agreement with C2AE, the engineering firm that we're working with on the project. And I just wanted to comment that I think that overall, the trail will be a positive addition to our community. It's going to benefit not only residents, but also visitors. However, we have to acknowledge that the trail it runs parallel to Blue Star Highway, and it crosses Lake Street. So what the trail presents us with is an opportunity. Sorry, I'm still out of breath.
Take your time to take a nice deep breath. Yes, just take
I
your
don't usually
time.
run. And anyway, the trail presents us with an opportunity to improve both the safety and the aesthetics of that intersection. And so this contract with C2AE will facilitate that. I think it's very important, and I just want to encourage you to approve it.
Thank you, Nancy. Anyone else in the audience want to speak to agenda items only? All right. Anybody online? Jamie, do you see anybody with their hands raised?
I don't.
Okay. So now we are on to 9A, consent agenda, regular city council meeting minutes. If I could have a motion to approve those.
Mayor,
Yes.
motion to approve the regular city council meeting minutes for November 27th, 2023.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Dean, second by Baldwin. This is a roll call. Any questions or any corrections on that first? All right, it's a roll call.
Anderson,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Stanton.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Now on to 10A. These are your staff reports, boards, commissions, and committees. City manager report.
Madam Mayor, the report is on page 9. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Does anyone have any questions for Ryan on his report?
Madam Mayor, good evening, everybody. I'm not sure, I didn't see any reference, but for the strategic session on the 20th, do we have an agenda yet for that meeting? We know what kind of the duration is going to be, but just kind of an order of events. Do we have that yet?
We have not pushed out an agenda, but we can do that.
Yes, please. I would appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, on to the treasurer's report. Is Peter online?
Yes.
All right. Hi, Peter.
Hello. I really have nothing to add. The audit is completed and hopefully they will be to present it online or Zoom the first meeting in January. So it is completed and it's been filed with the state of Michigan. And
right.
otherwise, I don't have anything else to add. If somebody's got any questions or.
Go,
I didn't hear what was completed. The audit.
the audit.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Russ.
Madam Mayor, Peter, is it possible for the council to maybe get a PDF copy of the draft audit so we can review it in advance of the meeting? In
Yes,
January?
yep, I got hard copy. Yep, not a problem.
Okay, thank you very much. I would appreciate that. I can't speak to anybody else, but.
Myself as well.
All right. Anything else? All right, Peter, thank you. On to planning and zoning, Ryan.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Just one update from my report. When I prepared the report last Thursday, we had one applicant for your open planning commission seat, and since then we received an additional application. So today will have been 2 full weeks, and I anticipate the mayor and planning commission chair will be convening soon to interview those 2 applicants.
Any questions for Ryan? All right, Ryan, thank you. Department of Public Works, Scott, anything to add? Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Scott? Again, thank you for all you've done. I know you guys have been working hard, although there hasn't been much snow, which has been really nice.
It's that one time.
Okay, how about Sheriff's Department?
Nothing to report this week.
Okay. On to our engineer. Is John online?
Is that?
Okay. All right, so next page, on to boards, commissions, and committees, Fire District Administration Board. And Dan Fox.
Good evening, all. The fire board will meet a week from today at 4 o'clock, FYI. And there wasn't a meeting between your last meeting and this one, so. But I did want to mention late last week, Thursday or Friday, I can't remember which, the subcommittee or whatever, fact-finding group of the board met for the second time on the ambulance discussion and ideation, whatever. The meeting had the 3 board members who are on that group, the chief, Chris Mattles, and we had a couple of outside resources, people with deep knowledge and experience in the ambulance business. Without going into detail or getting ahead of ourselves, because it's possible to do that if too much information flows out, but it was a very, very productive meeting. And Greg Janik sent a note afterwards saying he learned more in that one meeting about the challenges, opportunities, and potential changes in ambulance service structure within the fire district than he has in the past 2 years. And he's devoted a fair amount of time in the past 2 years to this issue. So without being, again, I don't want to be specific because this stuff has not yet come to the full fire district board. But that will happen. This next meeting of our group is tentative, but sometime probably during the first 2 weeks in January, where we will have yet another ambulance expert, for lack of a better descriptor, to take us further down the road we appear to be heading on. All of this will come to a head when our group makes its recommendation to the full fire board. That will be, like all fire board meetings, a public meeting, and you'd be welcome to tune in or I'll report on it anyway. So again, only reason to stand up here is to let you know that it's not just sitting there, and that really quite a good amount of progress, more than I ever imagined we'd make in one meeting myself. Got taken care of last week, so onward and upward. Any questions or
Yeah,
whatever?
just a quick one, Dan. Any timeline on that recommendation to the full fire board?
There's not a specific timeline. I mean, because until we do, our next meeting is dependent on that expert being available, and that schedule is still being worked on. I guess that could conceivably drift to February or whatever. My hope would be that by our March meeting, we will either have had that meeting or it would be at our March get together.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? All right, Dan, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Interurban Board, Gregory.
Well, we haven't had a regular board meeting since our last meeting. Our next meeting is on the 19th, December 19th. However, we did have a subcommittee meeting about expanding our hours, so we'll have some of our hours expanded before the board. We've decided to continue our committee and look into it a little bit further to perhaps even increase more hours for the summer. And so we'll be doing a survey that we'll be sending out to all of our writers and the community. So we'll be working on that. Also, our audit, as we talked about, is should be just about finished up, and we'll all have I'll have a copy of that at our next meeting to review. And then I think that's about it. Going with Interurban, we're waiting on plans from our engineer for our building expansion. So we'll be excited to get that started probably sometime early next spring. So.
Great. Any questions for Gregory? All right, on to Cal Lake Sewer and Water Authority. I don't believe Barry is online. No, okay. Harbor Authority, we are meeting in January. I've mentioned that before. Zoning Board of Appeals. No meeting this month. Okey doke. Historic District Commission. Russ?
Yeah, good evening. I had my first meeting on December 6th. It's good to be back with those folks, and again, it's one meeting, but I think for those of you that have not served on a commission, you should be very pleased and proud of the professionalism and the integrity of the people that serve on our commissions. The Planning Commission, which I've had the opportunity to serve for the past 2.5 years, can say that with complete confidence. In Historic District Commission, I can say the same. Very respectful of, we had one application, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But the professionalism and understanding of the ordinance was to be commended. So we should call those folks out as often. I feel like I should call those folks out as often as I can for the work that they do. We had one application for 254 Francis. If you're not familiar with that, that's a corner of Francis and Holland Street. It's currently a vacant lot. It's been vacant ever since I've been a kid. Played on the tree there. It used to be a gas station back in the day. So there's a new home being proposed for that lot. The application was tabled. The reason the application was tabled, and if I miss anything, the zoning administrator, I'm sure will fill in the blanks. The biggest concern that the Historic District Commission had was on the siting and massing, which is part of our ordinance. In the siting and massing, we talked about the compatibility with surrounding structures, the streetscape compatibility. Had a good detailed discussion about that. The architectural style, there's some suggestions regarding some things that the contractor who was here to represent the owners took under advisement to take back to the owners. But really what it came down to was we had a difficult time understanding how this proposal would be compatible with the siting and massing of homes that are surrounding it. So we've asked the applicant and the contractor to bring back I forget exactly. Yeah, some renderings so the commission can better understand how this is going to look. This is a lot that has not had a house on it for a long, long time. And it's one of the key intersections of town coming into town. And my personal opinion is that this is the opportunity to make sure we get it right for the things that people expect when they come into town. And I think that the builder and the owners will be compliant with that. But we'll be seeing that at our first meeting in January in terms of how they approach that. And so when you drive by the corner, just stop and look at it for a moment and just kind of think what might be appropriate. So.
Just a question, was the applicant okay with that, being that
They were
the
not-
historic,
They were
You
not
know,
present.
it's like a whole nother month before they can get going on their housing project. I know they've waited a long time to get that built.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were not present, but understood the timeline.
Okay,
So.
okay. Anybody have any other questions for Russ? All right, Russ, thank you. And on to the planning commission. Holly.
Yeah, our next meeting is next week on the 21st. We'll be talking about the waterfront properties, which we all have in our packet today. Just more information where that stands. So we'll look at the proposed changes and then also short-term rentals and looking at sort of what goes into the zoning bucket versus police power. So yeah, it should be a packed agenda.
And as Ryan had mentioned, Steve Mans and I will be interviewing the two candidates for the planning
Yes,
commission.
that's great.
Yep. So we'll get that done and I will have a recommendation by the 20th at our meeting, our regular meeting. I hope to have that recommendation by the 20th. Okay. Let's see, Parks and Public Works Committee, Helen.
No, we have not met. Not
Okay.
yet.
Tri-Community Trail Study Committee.
I have not met with the committee yet, so nothing new to report beyond what we discussed on Wednesday at our workshop.
Okay. And then Recycling Ad Hoc Committee, anything that anyone wants to update on that? Okay. All right, moving on.
I'm sorry, I do have one question on that.
Yes.
I think if I saw in the historic district, do we have staff approval to do the recycling bin? I'm sorry, I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Planning director. Did I read that correctly? And I read the historic district packet. Did they give staff approval to approve the recycling bins?
That's a good question.
No, I don't have that information yet to
Okay.
bring to at least the chair and then potentially the commission. So as soon as we receive that information, we can take that.
I just read something about it in the packet and I couldn't remember if like I should be bringing that as part of the PPW or whatever. So we can talk about it offline. I'm sorry. It just
It's
occurred to
okay.
me when
I
I saw it.
think
and I was
what
like,
you probably saw was the temporary banner sign for Village Square is maybe what
Okay.
you were thinking about.
That's what it was.
So,
Yes,
yep.
correct. Okay.
Yep. So that was something that I did run by the chair and typically signage is something that's administratively approved and he agreed in that case that could be administratively approved
Okay.
as well.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Ryan, thank you. Request for payment, none. We're on to 12A, approval of accounts payable. And I do have to make note here. I had a conversation with City Manager Heiss, and he would like me to pull item number 11 for additional review. Do you want to discuss that?
Madam Mayor, yeah, please. Thank you so much. Staff would just like to review our ordinance as it relates to services provided by city staff. So.
Okay, so that would be, I'm looking for a motion to approve accounts payable in the amount of $164,000. Excuse me, let me start again. I would like a motion for accounts payable in the amount of $164,355.46. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I will move to approve accounts payable in the amount of 166,350.
So I just need to, yep, correct that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so make a motion to approve accounts payable in the amount of $164,355.46.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, and do we have any discussion? All right. That's a roll call. Yeah, go ahead.
Anderson,
Yes.
Baldwin. Yes. Dean,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Introduction of ordinances, none. Unfinished business, none. On to new business. We're at 15A, waterfront moratorium extension. And this is on page 27 of your packet. And Ryan Cummins, are you wanting to tee that one up?
Certainly, Madam Mayor. If you'd like, I can kind of go through a fuller explanation or maybe just a really brief one.
A brief one would
okay.
be fine. I think everyone here has heard, we were, at the workshop, and I
Yep.
think even everyone online was also at the workshop.
Certainly. So the short of it is that your temporary commercial development and construction moratorium in your Water Street South, Water Street North, and resort zoning districts is set to expire at the end of this year. Your planning commission held a public hearing in November on making some recommendations to the city council. They need just a little bit more time to finish their recommendations. And so staff brought forward a request for you to extend the resolution through the end of March, with the understanding that if any new regulations are adopted before the end of March, so that we can add some language in that the moratorium essentially would expire at that point.
Anyone would like to make a motion?
Mayor,
Yes.
motion to approve resolution number 231211-B, a resolution extending the temporary waterfront commercial development and construction moratorium.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, I would just say that, this doesn't mean that we're going to extend it for a long period of time. We just needed a little bit more time to get through this, make sure we do it right. And I think that was a good move. And I think all of us would agree to that we just need a little bit more time to make sure we're doing the right things. I did have a question from a constituent, from Sergeant Marine. They were wondering, just having a new electrical stanchion, is that something that is still part of the moratorium, or can they just ask to have that administratively approved?
It would be, we've, as I've reviewed various requests that have come up with legal, we construed the moratorium very strictly, and that would be something that's considered, even though it's fairly minor in nature and fairly small in nature, would be considered a site improvement. I would say timing wise, if your planning commission makes a recommendation to you at their meeting this month, this topic would be brought up to you next month. And now, certainly wouldn't want to rush the council on any of your review, and I don't know how long, your review may take, or if you may want additional information from the planning commission, but we may not be looking at a very lengthy period of time if this is
Okay.
passed tonight.
Should wrap up fairly quickly. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Alright.
If approved, this would make it so that moratorium stood for a full year. Is that what it is? Or
So the moratorium initially was set to expire at the end of August, and the original moratorium language allowed the council to extend it by resolution. So there was one extension through the end of December by resolution. So this is just one more 3-month period, but
the
you're
total
correct.
was
It
a
would,
year?
you're correct. The total would essentially make it a year if we went through the end of it.
Anyone else? All right, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Stanton.
Yes.
White,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. And now we are on to new business 15B, council approval of STR police powers. This is on page 31 of your packet.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. Motion to authorize the planning commission to make police power ordinance recommendations regarding short-term rentals.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Dean, second by White. And if we could have discussion on this, if anybody would like Ryan to explain this a little bit more thoroughly, since we just had a workshop on that, but for those in the audience that might just need a quick rundown of what this means exactly.
Yeah, a quick rundown is, essentially your zoning ordinance, or zoning ordinance generally regulates land use in particular zoning districts. Whereas a police powers ordinance generally, regulates, business, licenses and activities throughout an entire city. So right now, all of your short-term rental regulations are entirely within your zoning ordinance. The recommendations that the short-term rental task force made, a lot of them, at least from a staff perspective, we feel are probably better for a police powers related ordinance. And we think some of your current regulations in your zoning ordinance related to short-term rentals are also more appropriate for a police powers ordinance. And so the planning commission has authority from the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act to make recommendations on zoning related ordinances, but doesn't have the direct authority to make regulations on police powers related ordinances unless you were to essentially make that request of them. And I think with the fact that all the regulations right now are in the zoning ordinance, it makes some sense to have your planning commission make recommendations on both the zoning and police powers, because some of those items are going to have to be potentially removed from zoning anyway, and they'd have to make a recommendation on that. And then, and it gets their input as we go along as well. So
Does anybody have any questions for Ryan or any comments?
One question, what's your sense of timing?
So again, without wanting to, tell the planning commission to complete something by a certain period of time, there's the potential, if the council were to delegate this authority tonight, that the planning commission has a discussion here next week. It pretty much has a discussion about, okay, which recommendations from the task force, are there any that you essentially disagree with? And if there's none that they really disagree with, and they're comfortable with that, I think staff and legal counsel, we can prepare both a proposed zoning update and police powers related update for them to review in January. And then if they're comfortable with the language, set a public hearing in February, and then ultimately make a recommendation to the council on both zoning updates and police powers related updates. I think there could be some consensus, on most of those items. Certainly, I think that I'm hearing, mixed thoughts on because the task force didn't make an ultimate recommendation on residential caps or not. I think that's a discussion that the planning commission is going to have to maybe have some further discussion on, take some further time to study and evaluate. So that particular item may be something that takes some time. If there's a desire to continue studying it and evaluating it at all, I don't know. That's ultimately kind of up to you as our policymakers and our planning commissioners. But I think a majority of the items could be brought back to you fairly quickly.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I
Go
do
ahead,
have
Helen.
questions. So you're saying that they would discuss it in December, get it to staff and that in January, get something back to them in February. So council wouldn't get it until March?
Probably your first beginning of March, considering that they would have to have a public hearing.
Why would they have to have a public hearing?
So any of the zoning related updates, they have to have a public.
Couldn't we parse out the police powers versus zoning?
You could, but the challenge that you're going to have is that, say, for example, you put, yearly licenses in your police powers ordinance, and you put, how many trash totes in your police powers ordinance, and you put what maximum occupancy in your police powers ordinance. We're going to have a little bit of a situation where you have police powers ordinance saying one thing or zoning ordinance saying another thing over there. And there's going to be potentially some conflict between the two that we would need to work through. Whereas bringing both recommendations side by side are going to allow any regulations that are in your zoning ordinance to be removed and separately placed in a police powers ordinance. So that way there's not duplicate items.
And there's no way to have a special meeting? I mean, I'm uncomfortable. So I just want to recap. So all of this got started last year in January. We're talking, so we're in a year now, right? And that's when I wanted planning and council to take this on. That was my recommendation. And at that point, they said, no, we want to have a short-term rental task force. And I lost the fight, and that's fine. Democracy, that's great. So we went through the task force. We did that all summer. Get to the end, and now here we are. And now it's going to be March. So we're going to be at 14 months before we can even get a crack at it. I just have to say, I think we owe our residents better. I think 14 months is a really long time to come to this. And I'm disappointed. I don't see a better way at this point other than, having a special meeting. I think that maybe planning could have a special meeting.
Yeah, and I don't know what the protocol, but could council recommend to the chair of planning that they consider with a lot of emphasis from council that they could maybe have a special meeting I agree with Helen. It takes a long time, and it would be great if we could condense the time frame a little bit.
And to put a finer point on it, the reason that I say that is because we run out of options if we keep going, because I think if certain residents don't get the relief that they're going to seek, then they should be allowed to get something on the ballot. And if we back this up to a certain point, we're not going to give them that opportunity. And again, I think we've been batting this around for a long time. And it's time to be serious about it. I mean, not that we haven't been serious. I rescind that comment. It's time to move with alacrity. We have to move on this. And council, planning meeting once a month, and then so planning meets once a month, and then they give it to legal, and then legal gets it back to them, and they have another month, and then we get it, and then we're going to want to sit on that and look at it, and because we don't have to vote on it that one night, we're going to be out into April. by the time we have anything meaningful. And I just don't think that that's appropriate. So
Does anyone else have anything to add? All right, so we do have a motion on the table and it is a voice vote. I believe on this, it says voice vote. Yeah, do you want it to be a roll call?
Nope, go ahead with the voice.
All right,
On my paper.
so we have a motion from Councilmember Dean. Motion to authorize the planning commission to make police power ordinance recommendations regarding short-term rentals. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to new business 15C, Blue Star Trail. Include previous agreements approved by council along with updated terms and conditions. This is on page 32 of your packet.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. So you had a robust conversation about this item at your workshop. I do have a recommended motion. To the motion, I would add that the amount that's in the packet for this expenditure is $55,800 from C2AE. And what this is for, again, to recap your conversation at the workshop, is to allow your Parks and Public Works Committee, your residents, your stakeholders, and your city council to vet the nuances and specific design elements for the Blue Star Trail, specifically Lake Street crossing. The shifting, very, very important, the shifting, a slight shift that you talked about at your workshop of the pallet sign if needed and desired, and possible accommodations for traffic signals at Lake Street and Blue Star Highway. Also the vertical design elements along the bridge in concert with City Village of Douglas. So that's what's in front of you right now. What the Mr. Muncy had, Mr. Gardner had requested was time and material costs, which has been provided. That's on page 36. And a not to exceed, which you have in your packet. Happy to entertain any and all questions.
All right, do we have a motion, first of all?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you for getting the information. I still think it's, at least from my perspective, we're not quite where I think we should be in terms of
sorry,
information.
point of order. Shouldn't we have a motion before we have discussion?
Yes, that's what I was
Okay,
asking.
I will make a motion to table this agreement until the workshop meeting in January for further discussion. We did not have this agreement in front of us at our workshop last Wednesday, and I have a number of questions about the agreement before I'm comfortable making a vote.
Do I have a second on the tabled motion? All right. Then do I have a motion to approve?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make is this the sample motion here?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to make a motion to move to allow staff and legal to approve the Blue Star Trail amendment as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Baldwin, second by Anderson. Now, any discussion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I would just add, the manager had made a recommendation to add a not to exceed to the motion.
Is the as presented enough for that, or do you need it to be stated?
Oh, here it is at the, I see this. one. Do
Would
need
you
me
like to
state it?
correct it?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to allow staff and legal to approve the Blue Star Trail amendment with a not to exceed cost of $55,800 as presented in the amendment.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, do we have any discussion?
Yep, Madam Mayor, just some of the things that came up as a result of getting this agreement in the packet. And I don't want to take up too much time this evening. I'm not opposed to the project, so please let me make that clear. What I'm concerned about is not having enough clarity around what the potential financial investment will be for our citizens. We've already made a $50,000 commitment towards the match. And if I recall, when this project first came to the city, it was committed that there would not be a financial investment for the citizens. This was going to be a $0 project. Now, I could be wrong on that, but that's what I recall. And there's also some things in the agreement that I have questions about regarding the bridge. The bridge is a major part of this project, which is will be a mutual discussion between the Village of Douglas and the City of Saugatuck. That's not in this agreement. Two is, I also have some questions about the signal. Have we discussed this with the county commission or county road department? Have we discussed this with MDOT? There's some potential concerns at Lake and Culver regarding the need and for what type of signal. Three is the sign. I've not seen any preliminary plans to help me understand so I can explain to the constituents. You start talking about moving a pallet sign, even if it's 5 feet, people are gonna get, this has been a I don't want to say contentious project, but there's been a lot of questions, and I just don't feel as though I have the information necessary to understand what the potential financial investment might be from our citizens. I know that part of this agreement is to get to that point, but what I want to have clarity on is exactly what we could potentially, from an investment standpoint, be committing our citizens to.
Anybody else have any comments?
Just to be clear, and I'm glad Councilmember Gardner mentioned it, the pallet sign will not be moved from that corner. It will remain at the corner that it's at. It may be shifted a few feet, but it will not move from that intersection.
Anybody else?
I share Councilman Gardner's concern over the detail that was presented at the workshop. It was frustrating to be asked to approve something with no figures essentially in it. So while I understand this is a approval of a planning phase, I would encourage the group involved to put much more effort into the details presented when it comes actually time to approve this in full.
Madam Mayor, I want clarity, the $52,800 not to exceed, or $55,800. Is that solely on the citizens of Saugatuck and the city, or is that a shared investment between the township and the city?
Madam
Go
Mayor,
ahead.
that's specific to the city of Saugatuck.
Okay.
Okay. So is that money is that coming out of the $50,000 match, or this is up and above that amount?
So, Mr. Gardner, I think you're talking about a $50,000 match. I'm not quite sure the figures that you're using.
The city council approved a $50,000 up to $50,000 match. It's on, which is another question that I have about this agreement, is that when we met at our workshop, we were presented with a draft, what I think was a draft resolution. I could be mistaken that this was one that was previously agreed to, but it was presented just as information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
not to interrupt, Mr. Gardner, I don't know if you were finished.
Well, within that agreement, it says, Friends of the Blue Star Trail commitment towards match, $205,000. Thank you. City, $50,000, township, $10,000. So the $55,800 is above that commitment. This is going to be towards the grant, which is.
No, this is very not towards a grant at all. This is very specific engineering costs for the nuances and the design needs for the city of Saugatuck.
So that $50,000 commitment towards match will
Yeah,
be,
nothing to do with that. So above and beyond.
so we're at potentially $105,800 at this point and don't know where the ceiling is on it.
That's, I mean, I would agree with that. You don't.
So, and that's the point I'm driving towards, is I just don't feel like I've got, maybe it's just me. If it's just me, just say, hey, Gardner, you're not getting it. But,
If
but,
I
but,
may,
but,
from the way I understand it, there's additional costs associated with the landscaping and that corner because it was challenging. So there's additional costs associated with that the engineers from C2AE are asking for additional money because of that intersection. There's additional costs associated with what they need to do as far as studying to, learn if we can get a stoplight at that intersection. And then the additional costs as to what will be done with the bridge. And those are the three additional things that made this project go above what we were already committed to. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. And based on previous conversations from city council and concerns from past city council members, the city wanted to remain very much in control of the design elements within the city limits. And this is the way that you're able to accomplish that, is that you spend the money to design your own elements. Otherwise, if you do a cost share with other municipalities, you go out for a grant for the design elements that you're talking about tonight, then you're sharing it with a larger outside group. As an example, Friends of the Blue Star Trail. We've heard, thoughts and perhaps criticisms and some compliments about, having outside folks work on design elements within the city limits. If you're spending your city dollars and designing your own city elements, that's a way that the city specifically can help out with that. If you open it up, it's gonna be problematic, I think, politically.
And something I just want to point out, the costs are time and materials. If we can make this be a little bit more efficient, the cost would be less.
We will, and city staff is looking after that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
But Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I mean, I think this speaks to the sensitive nature of that corner and the sensitivities around the pallet sign. I think the need to have 3 high-quality renderings done so no one in the community is surprised about, what that corner will look like. And once again, I'll say again, the pallet sign is not leaving the gateway to Saugatuck where it's always been. It will remain there. But this proposal has 3 different proposals, one very minimal and one a little bit more ambitious, which we can allow the community to look at and provide feedback. I think this is money well spent to prevent surprises and unintended consequences down the road. There's also nearly $12,000 in this amount toward future proofing that intersection, the sign. So when a traffic signal goes in, which I think we all think is inevitable and sorely needed from a safety standpoint, that the pallet sign will not be in conflict with a traffic signal, and it will not be, diminished in terms of its impact on visitors to Saugatuck.
Okay.
So from my perspective, this is money well spent to preserve one of our more important landmarks in the city and to make sure it's handled very, very carefully.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just my last comments on this is I think what I'm hearing from fellow council members is there still is a challenge here in getting information out in a way that's easily understood by maybe just Councilmember Gardner, but number 2 is the community. This has been quiet for about a year, maybe 14 months. There's been little discussion at this council meeting about some of the discussions maybe taking place. Representative Kimball is here this evening. I know there's been some discussions at the Parks and Public Works Committee. There's been little reported. I still think that the traffic signal is a open question as to whether that's needed. That's been discussed a long time. Also, the pallet sign is a bit less of a concern based on the more that I hear about it. But again, that's just because questions have been asked. We're hearing a little bit more about that. The other big part of this is the bridge. The bridge is a major issue, and it was a major issue of discussion when this was first brought up, 2 years ago? A lot of, I don't know how to describe it, a lot of concern about the use of that bridge, the safety and so forth. And there's no engineering costs in here or estimated costs for engineering studies of that particular aspect of it, which in my mind is probably going to be the most expensive part of it.
See intersection engineering line item, $15,500.
That's for Lake and Butler or Lake and Blue Star. It's not the bridge.
Madam Mayor, I can help
Go
with
ahead.
this convo.
Yes. Please.
Okay. So I think the council was very thrilled when they had the emergency services, specifically the fire department, buy into some of the design elements when the engineer reached out to that group. And so I know a major concern was the bridge crossing. And I know that's one of the things that held the Blue Star Trail project up for maybe a decade or more.
Yeah.
But there was initial buy-in from the fire department, and the engineers are really excited to continue to work with emergency services to do a safe bridge crossing. So that's already in the TAP grant. That's already in your federal grant that you've received. So those design elements have already been figured out and bought into by emergency services, including the fire department.
And I mean, and we can all, I suppose, agree to disagree on the need for a traffic signal at that intersection. But with that, I'd like to call the question.
Okay. This is a roll call. Jamie?
Anderson,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gardner,
No.
Muncy,
No.
Stanton.
Yes.
White,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, on to 15D, poverty guidelines. This is on page 37 in your packet. And I believe the motion is a couple pages after that. Ryan, do you want to go over this or do we have anyone online? Madam Clerk?
I saw.
I'm actually here if you need to.
I'm sorry.
I was almost gonna let Ryan take that one. I really was, Ryan, so you owe me lunch. Good evening, council. This is Don Jolet. I'm your deputy assessor for the city. And what you have in front of you is the poverty guidelines. That is a state mandatory report that we do every year. The guidelines come straight from the state. What we do is we have to adopt them in order to have them on our website and available for anyone who wanted to take it, who would like to take advantage of the poverty exemptions given to us by the state. There's really no difference from last year from the income guidelines and the asset test, other than this year we added a 75 percentile in there. That's against the state guidelines. We didn't do it on our own, and that may allow some families to be able to take advantage of this exemption over last year. Time will tell. Currently, we do not have an approved poverty exemption in Saugatuck, but every year you never know what you might get.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2023 poverty exemption guidelines.
Second.
Councilmember Muncy, it's 2024.
Pardon?
It's 2024 poverty.
I'm sorry.
Before.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the 2024 poverty exemption guidelines.
And I will second.
All right, any discussion? All right, this is a roll call.
Anderson,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes. Excuse me, yes.
Yes.
Stanton,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, thank you so much. And
Thank you,
on to-
council. Have a
Yep,
great
we
evening.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
On to the council meeting dates. This is 15E, page 43 in your packet.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 231211-A listing the city council schedule of meetings for the year 2024.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, this is also a roll call.
Anderson,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gardner,
Yes.
Muncy,
Yes.
Stanton.
Yes.
White,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, we are on to public comment on anything you would like to discuss. Is there anyone in the room who would like to stand up for public comment? No one in the room? All right, online, is there anyone who would like to speak at this point? No one's hand is raised. No correspondence. Now on to council comments. I would start with Holly.
Nothing for me. Thank.
As if I haven't spoken enough, I would just want to say thank you to my fellow council members and staff administration for listening when I talk about issues of concern to me as a council member. I will continue to bring up financial discussions for this council and for the city. I really believe we're in a position now where we really have to start paying attention to our spending. We have $4.5 million roughly in our general fund, which is a result of past councils and city administration being very careful about spending. That money will go quickly with some projects that we have coming with a capital improvement project or plan, which is, I think, still in work. We need to focus on that. Two is we have lead pipe replacement. That's going to be a big cost for us. And I know we've got a project underway to begin to talk about how we're going to be able to fund that. And we have infrastructure. We have streets that need work. I heard from several people that were very happy about Tack and Taylor East and West saying, okay, when's my street going to be done? Because it's beautiful work. If you haven't been down to North and Maple, you should drive down there. It's a substantial change and difference to what was there before. That's just one thing that we need to do. And I am concerned because our revenues are flat. You know, we will not have the opportunity to see some of the tax increases we've seen over the past few years. That's going to go. We can't count on the state or the federal government to fund some of the projects we need to work on. So I will be continuing to talk about finances and my concern for the city and finding ways in which the council and the administration can talk together with our citizens to figure out how best to plan. Also, Citizen of the Year, it was kind of interesting that was mentioned because we used to have an award. And I would highly recommend that we think about repurposing that to bring that back because that was very, very, very well received. Also too is maybe for the benefit of our new council members as well as for someone like myself, getting a Dune Ridge legal update here probably in the new year. It's been pretty quiet. I know there's some things going on, but might be a benefit for all of us to kind of be brought up to speed on where we are. Thank you.
Helen.
Yeah, I wanted to echo your comments earlier. I also volunteered at the parade and at the pub crawl and continue to be inspired by a lot of the people that work to affect some positive change in our community. I do agree with Councilmember Gardner on, you know, fiscal responsibility. I just think that there's certain things that we need to be spending our money on. And I will say that myself as a taxpayer, I'm always happy to pay taxes. I just want to know what I'm going to get for it. And so some of this stuff has been long overdue, and I'm happy to see that we are putting the money in the right direction.
All right, Scott.
Would be remiss if I didn't echo the mayor's comments on thanking April and the volunteers and the first responders that made the holiday parade such a success earlier this month. Very grateful for all that work. It was a very good day.
Gregory.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain, my vote no on 15C wasn't because I don't support the Blue Star Trail. I certainly do support it and I always have. I just can't, honestly vote on something that I just didn't know that much about. I had to unfortunately miss our workshop meeting. And I didn't have enough time to read everything about it. Again, I do support Gardner in making sure that we're fiscal responsible. It might be a great plan. I just didn't have time to read through it all. And so that is why I voted no for it. It's just I didn't know enough about it. Of course, I do support the Blue Star Trail. So I just don't want folks to think that I don't support it just because I voted no on that.
Okay. Okay. All right. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say yes.
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 Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.